All right, it is Thursday, April 2nd, and today we're going to talk about some quadrilaterals that are within the world of shapes and specifically within the world of polygons. So it could be a little confusing to think about that. Basically, polygons is this big category that includes all two-digit, two-dimensional shapes. And then within that, you have more specific categories. Like, for example, triangles would be two-dimensional shapes with three sides. Today we're going to talk about quadrilaterals, which are two-dimensional shapes with four sides. So a couple of words that we need to know that you're going to hear today. The first is parallel. And if you think about two lines that are parallel, they're running alongside each other, um, and they never get closer together and they never get farther apart. So they are um, always the same distance apart. So like for example, these two lines are parallel. Doesn't mean they have to be the same length, but they have to be running the same way, and then this space in between them will never increase or decrease. Um, the next is adjacent. Okay, adjacent just means next to or beside something else. So like if we talk about the adjacent sides, oh, let's not do that in yellow. The adjacent sides of a triangle. Okay, so like this side right here is adjacent to this side because they're right next to each other. Congruent means the same or identical to something else. So like if I copy and pasted this shape right here, see if I can do that. Yeah. Okay, so I have these two shapes that are identical. They're exactly the same. We could say that these two are congruent to each other. And then the last vocab word is hierarchy. And we're going to use that to help us organize our quadrilaterals today. So a hierarchy in general is just a way of organizing a group of things from least specific to most specific. And I'll say a little bit more about that here in a little bit. But let's get going here. So um, first we have quadrilaterals. Okay, so this is going to be like the top of our hierarchy. And what I'll do is I'll come down here and I'll show you this picture. Okay, this is what our hierarchy looks like. And we're going to talk about how that is made and why it is what it is. But the first thing we need to determine is what a quadrilateral is. So it's a two-dimensional shape with four sides and four angles. So any shape that has four sides and four angles fits into our quadrilateral category. Underline that there. Okay. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, and then in between each of the sides is where the angles would be. So 1 would be here, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there are 4 angles. Now, everything from here on out, like obviously we're talking about quadrilaterals today. So this would be this is the least specific category. And each step we're going to get a little more specific. And what that means is every shape that we talk about is a quadrilateral today, but we're going to keep adding a couple more requirements for each shape as we go. So for example, when we go to the next one, okay, this is a trapezoid. So a trapezoid it's still a quadrilateral because it still has four sides and four angles, but now we're adding that a trapezoid must have one pair of parallel sides. So if you look at this, okay, this side is parallel to this side. It still has four sides and four angles, but now it also has a pair of parallel sides, which is what tells us it's a trapezoid. Okay, so think of it as this is a more specific classification of a shape within the world of quadrilaterals. Next, we have a kite. Okay, a kite again is a quadrilateral, but this time it has two pairs of equal length and adjacent sides. So what that means is it has to have obviously four sides and two pairs within that. So like right here, those two sides are the same length and they are adjacent to each other. And then this would be the other pair, this one and this one. And we use these tick marks to help identify which two sides are the same. So if you see a tick mark and a tick mark, that tells you without a doubt that this side and this side are the same length. And then the same thing up here. We use two tick marks up here so that we don't get confused between this pair of equal length adjacent sides and this pair of equal length adjacent sides. Okay? So again, a kite is a quadrilateral, but this one has to have two pairs of equal length and adjacent sides. This one is probably pretty familiar to guys. We call it a parallelogram. Okay, it's a quadrilateral with two pairs of parallel sides. So here's one pair, right there, and then here's the other pair. Okay, and again, like, size of the sides doesn't matter here. It just says that they have to have two pairs of parallel sides. So if you think about it, this shape right here is also a parallelogram by definition. You'll find this a little farther down in our hierarchy because we also classify it as something else. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, this one, right? This is a rhombus, and I didn't type this into the definition, but it is still a quadrilateral. But this time the four sides, they have to be all equal length. Okay, so think of a rhombus as, it's kind of like a funky looking square. Because all four sides have to be the same length. It's just as if we shifted it a little bit. So quite often rhombuses and squares look similar. It just looks like somebody took the rhombus and turned it a little bit. So as long as all four sides are equal length, we have a rhombus. Now, this one looks pretty familiar to you too, I would imagine. Okay, a rectangle is a quadrilateral that has four right angles. Okay, it doesn't matter how long the sides are, as long as they meet to form right angles, like you can see here. Remember this little sign in the corner here, this little square looking thing, that tells us that there is a right angle present. So it's just kind of a way to help us keep straight, because sometimes in geometry things look like something that they're not. And so we have different symbols to help us ensure that what we think it is really what it is. So if you see this little square in the corner, that tells me that it's a right angle. And then here's the last one. Okay, this would be the most specific. Okay, so a square is a quadrilateral that has the most specific set of rules. So a square must have four sides that are equal length and four right angles. So now you see the tick marks to tell us that all sides are the same length, and you see the squares in the corner to tell you that they are right angles. So now here's our hierarchy, okay? And bear with me here, I'm going to walk through this with you. Up at the top here, so this, again, the top would be the least specific. Okay, we have quadrilaterals in general. Quadrilaterals have to have four sides and four angles. And I didn't say this before, and I probably should have, but all the lines need to be straight. Okay, you can't have a curvy line in your quadrilateral. But, so the top here would be the least specific in quadrilaterals. All right, then you get slightly more specific, you go to trapezoids and kites. From there, okay, so basically what this is saying is kites are quadrilaterals and trapezoids are quadrilaterals. They both fall into that category of four sides and four angles. Then, if you have a kite that has all four sides the same length, you have a rhombus. Same thing over here. If you have a trapezoid with two pairs of parallel sides now, you have a parallelogram. So like if you follow the arrows through here, we're going from least specific up here to most specific down here. So really a square would fall into every other category on this hierarchy. This is where this discussion of a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. A square is a rectangle because it has the four right angles. A rectangle is not a square because not all four sides are the same length. So that's kind of where that discussion comes from. And if you need to, like, you feel free to pause the video, look through this. It could seem a little overwhelming, but it's just a way to keep the different shapes somewhat organized. And certainly you can go back through and look at the different pages. You have quadrilateral, trapezoid, kite, parallelogram, rhombus, rectangle, and square, and then our hierarchy. Okay. Now all I want you to do for this, your task is to go outside. I know, crazy. Okay. Or you could do this inside. If the weather's not great, obviously I don't want you going outside if it's raining or whatever. But look around your house and find some different quadrilaterals that double as everyday items. So one example might be if you find a piece of paper, right? If you look at that piece of paper looks like a rectangle. Okay, that could be one example. Or maybe you go find, maybe you find a quilt or a blanket that is a square. You could find all kinds of different shapes within your house. I'm just looking around the room I'm in right now. I see a lot of rectangles, some squares. I know we have a kite in our garage somewhere. Okay, but basically what I want you to do is find a couple of those items and then post onto Seesaw. Tell us what the item is and then what shape it is. And if somebody finds a trapezoid or a kite or a parallelogram, something like that, that would be really cool to see. So I hope you post those on Seesaw. Be creative, have fun with it. Okay, spend some time outside today. Whoops, that was terrible. Let's try that again. Okay, so be creative, have fun, and I will see you guys tomorrow.